There is only one reason why you're dying in Elden Ring. Now, you might be thinking, oh, it's difficulty, right? No, it's because you're doing this. And that, my friend, is maidenless gameplay. So I'm here to help you in becoming an Elden Giga Chat or something close to it. Now, if this is your first From Software game, you're just starting out, you may be noticing that the game is a bit difficult and you're dying a lot because the enemies hit too hard and you can't really get accustomed to the way the gameplay works. And that is true. However, there are some systems in the game which you may or may not be aware of, which can drastically make your experience less painful. And I'll get into that in this video. So the first system you need to know about, and you probably noticed this through your gameplay as well, are iframes. Essentially what iframes are, they are a window in time or a few frames during the gameplay where you are essentially invulnerable to enemy attacks. Now you may have noticed that when you are being attacked by an enemy, sometimes you will roll through it and not get hit even though you should have. That's because of the iframes. And this is actually really important in the game as well because it allows you to evade most, if not all, of the attacks and take zero damage, and it really does improve your game a lot if you are able to observe the enemy and time your rolls. There's also more than one way to utilize iframes, especially in Elden Ring, because not only can you roll through attacks, but you can also jump or utilize some Ash of War. So the next time you're playing the game and you're being attacked by an enemy or a boss, try to stay calm for a second, look at the boss, the attack that's coming your way, and try to roll through it as it's about to hit, and you'll notice that it works consistently, and all it requires is for you to stay calm and look at the enemy, which most people may or may not do when starting out in these games. The next thing in the game that you most likely already know is parrying. And there are actually two kinds of the parry skill. One is the standard version and the other one is the buckler version. The latter is actually faster and allows you to parry attacks easily. Now, the parry skill is essentially work on most, if not all, bosses. Like for example, if you're up against a humanoid boss, you can most likely parry most of its attacks, but not some. However, if you are up against some monstrosity like, what's a good example here? Like the ulcerated tree spear or something, that is not really, gonna work. But do keep in mind that most humanoid bosses and enemies can be parried, but there are some exceptions to their attacks. For example, like Millennia. When you're up against Millennia, you can parry most of her attacks except for her Judgment Cut or the long-range thrust attack. Now in Elden Ring you have Ashes of War, which you can use to add special effects or skills, as they call it, to weapons, and the parry skill can be applied to weapons such as curved swords, daggers, stuff like that, and of course shields as well. Now, while you can do that, the buckler parry, being faster, is a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot better. Now, the way you can get a buckler shield, there are two ways to do that. If you're starting out the game and you pick the bandit class, you will get the buckler shield right off the bat. However, if you choose any other class, and obviously you won't have access to the buckler, you just get to Stormville Castle and you'll meet an NPC there by the name of Gostok, and you talk to him and he will be selling the buckler shield. Of course, you can just kill him to get his bell bearing, and that is an option too, but that's your choice basically. Most people, when starting out in the game, they will focus, most if not all, they will focus on leveling up their offensive stats, which is good, but you need health, you need stamina, you need the mind stat as well. If you are utilizing some skills or magic spells and whatnot. But most people, or at least the ones I've seen so far, they don't level up their vigor, and that is wrong. Because as you proceed in the game, you will get hit. You will trade some hits while attacking. And you need enough health to survive, because if you don't live through it, you won't be able to attack. Not only that, this game actually caps your actions, so to say, with a stamina bar. So if you don't have enough endurance, not only can you not take a lot of actions, but you cannot carry a lot of equipment as well. So for example, if you're trying to like run a power stancing build with heavy equipment, heavy armor, you cannot do that if you don't have enough endurance. And what factors into this is that the priority of the stats you level, the sequence. So when you're starting out, try to get vigor, endurance, or mind if you need it, but do not try to prioritize mind if you are not using things that utilize a lot of FP points. But other than that, try to get endurance and vigor to a decent number, for example 20, something like that, because aside from leveling up your stats, you also get equipment like talisman and whatnot to increase those values. So keep that in mind and prioritize leveling up these two so that you can actually live long enough to do something. Moving on, when it comes to your builds, you need to understand what you want. Do you want a balanced build, or you just want to go one trick or something? Like most people these days, you've also seen a few clips probably on the internet, people spamming stuff like Night and Flame, the sword, or the Moonveil Katana with the Transient Moonlight skill and whatnot. And those are examples of one trick. And you can actually really just go in and beat the game only by using that skill, and it works. People also utilize spells like Comet Azure or other things and just absolutely nuke the game. And that's perfectly fine actually, because it's an RPG. It's a difficult game. It's giving you the tools to approach the challenges of the game in whatever way you deem fit. And that works. However, on the other hand, you have people who focus on hybrid builds, like melee and mage. They combine it. I personally went with the hybrid build as well. And I always like start out with quality builds and focus in strength and dexterity at first, and then transition into magic, and then combine those two, and that's basically how I do it. So you need to have a clear idea of your build, what you want to go for. Do you want to capitalize on bleed procs, frost? Do you want to like have a power stancing build, or maybe have this tanky armor with high poise so that you can actually survive and just, you know, not be a glass cannon? And this matters because once you get into the late game, it's really difficult to instantly adapt. For example, you are up against a boss or something, right? And you realize that your melee build is putting you at a disadvantage, and of course you will die a lot in these games, and it can lead to frustration. And if you're dying a lot to a boss because of your melee build, for example, and you realize that if I were a mage, or if I were utilizing a mage spell or something, I could have done a lot better, right? It'll take you a while to, you know, progress with that, towards that kind of stuff. So it's always better to just have a mind, have a plan of what you want to do, and take action on it beforehand. After all, it's an RPG and there can be a million kinds of builds, so maybe look around on the internet, see what you like, and put that into practice, and you will definitely see that your game is going to improve. Alright, so some general tips over here at Flask of Wondrous Physics. Now, depending on what you add to it, it gives you special buffs, and also, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I'll try to phrase it properly, so that's not, but there are certain bosses that use attacks which you cannot nullify or avoid unless you use the flask. So do keep that in mind as well. It's not impossible to live through without it, but it definitely is taxing on your resources. So you can also break stances, enemy stances and whatnot, and deal critical hits to them, which is really effective if you want to improve your game. Now, this will, of course, come with practice. But if you are aware of these things, slowly but surely you will get the hang of it. Now, using a weapon also has an effect. Like for example, if you're using an ultra great sword with two hands, it will break enemy stances a lot faster compared to if you were using just a katana. And this basically works on all bosses and enemies regardless of whether they're a monstrosity or a human or whatever, but it works. And aside from that, you can use items, of course. They've always been there in RPGs. You can use items to add special effects to your weapons, like you have the rod grease and the dragon wound grease, which basically, makes the experience a lot less painful than it would be otherwise. And lastly, but not the least, of course, you have the mindset. You have to realize that these games are, at its core, kind of like challenging. They will kill you, you will die a lot in the game, and you just can't get it, you can't avoid it. Even if you co-op, even if you over level, the thing is, the moment you get cocky, the enemy is just going to hit you a few times and you'll die. Go in with the mindset to learn the boss patterns, and if it gets too much, take a break, maybe go do something else and just, relax and come back to it later, and this will definitely, surely help your game out. Like, out of all these things, which do matter, the mindset helps the most, because if you're dying for like 2 hours, of course, you're gonna get frustrated and then just leads to bad play and things don't work out. Those were some general tips and some advice on the game systems and stat priorities and whatnot on how you can improve your game and die a bit less, or maybe get less frustrated with all the deaths that go around in the game, because it will happen, but the way you approach these things will definitely impact your overall experience. But that's it for today. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment down below if you're watching this and you have any questions. It surely helps with the algorithm as well. And with that, this is Ren, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.